Yo, what is going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops, and today we're hopping right back into our top 50 list in NBA history. Today we got none other than David Robinson, the Admiral, Mr. Biceps, whatever you want to call him. Now, where do I got David Robinson on my all-time list? Well, I have him ranked at number 31. Now, before you hop on your high horse and get crazy, gonna need you guys to hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can see the rest of the videos on my list. Even if you unsubscribe after my top 50 list is revealed, that's fine with me, but just stay subscribed, hit that notification bell so you can see the full list, and that'll be a happy me. But without further ado, let's get right into David Robinson. Now, David Robinson, over the course of his career, was a 10-time NBA All-Star in 1990 until 1996, along with years of 1998, 2000, and 2001. He was also an All-NBA player for 10 different seasons. He made first-team All-NBA in 1991, 1992, 1995, and 1996. He made second-team All-NBA in 1994 and 1998, and he made third-team All-NBA in 1990, 1993, 2000, and 2001. In fact, he was even the league MVP in the NBA in 1995. He was also Defensive Player of the Year in 1992. And in terms of some defensive accolades, he's made 8 times on the All-Defensive team, 4 times on the first team, and 4 times on the second. On the first team, he made it in 1991, 1992, 1995, and 1996, and he made the second team in 1990, 1993, 1994, and 1998. He was also the scoring champion in 1994, along with being the rebounding leader in 1991 and the blocks leader in 1992. And overall, he is a 2-time NBA champion in 1999 and 2003. Now, in terms of MVP shares, he received votes for 10 different seasons, including being a top 3 finisher 5 times. In fact, from 1993 to 1996, that was 3 straight years where he was at least a top 2 finisher, including winning the award in 1994 and 1995. Now, granted, MJ wasn't really eligible for the first 2 of these seasons because he was playing baseball, and in the third year, well, that was the year that MJ finished first and D-Rob was second. But that's still a hard feat to accomplish. For some all-time stat rankings, 20,790 points puts him 46 all-time. A 21.1 point per game average puts him 43rd all-time. 10,497 rebounds puts him 36 all-time. A 10.6 rebound per game average, good for 42nd all-time. 2,954 blocks all-time puts him at 7th in NBA history. A 3.0 block per game average puts him 4th all-time. And a 58.3% true shooting average puts him at 60th in NBA history. In terms of some all-time advanced stat rankings, he has a 26.2 PER, which is 5th all-time, 98.5 offensive win shares, which is top 25 in NBA history, 80.1 defensive win shares, good for 10th all-time, 178.7 win shares, good for 13th all-time, a .250 win share per 48 rating, good for 2nd in NBA history, a 4.4 offensive box plus minus, good for 19th in NBA history, a 3.1 defensive box plus minus, good for 1st in NBA history, nobody of which is above him, 7.5 box plus minus rating, good for 4th all-time, an 82 VORP rating, good for 10th all-time, 116.3 offensive rating, good for 43rd all-time, and a 95.6 defensive rating, good for 4th all-time. So as we can see, the Admiral is very formidable when it comes to where he ranks all-time for some of the most highly debated statistical measures. But now let's transition into his playoff career. And in the playoffs, David Robinson has extreme drop-offs from his regular season performances. The thing is, his true shooting, his win share per 48, his PER, and his BPM all show such substantial drop-offs when you compare not just his entire career, but even his days before the Spurs drafted Tim Duncan, as well as his peak seasons compared to that of the regular season. He had multiple regular seasons of scoring more than his best average for a playoff run, and this is a case for even his blocks as well. For a big man that didn't shoot the 3-point shot, to have 16 series in your 27 playoff series for your career and shoot under 50% from the field, I mean, that's pretty abysmal, especially when 10 of those 14 series from your prime fit this category as well. And sure, you could argue he took a lot of mid-range shots for a big at that time, but if that's the case, then why was his regular season career was he able to shoot 52% from the field. So then if we're already looking at this comparison, he should have at least 3 or 4 less series to match this. And the greatest players are supposed to elevate in the playoffs as well, unless they truly have no help, which in this case can't be an excuse for D-Rob. In the 1990 second round series against Portland, the Blazers won in 7, but David Robinson wasn't even the best Spur in that series. It was Terry Cummings, who also showed up in Game 7, while D-Rob went 7 for 21 from the field. In the 1993 first round, as well as most of the 1995 playoffs, you could argue that Sean Elliott was better for both of those stretches. I mean, his versatility, his efficiency, and his net rating in 1993 were all significantly higher than Robinson's for the 1993 series. And in 1995, Robinson shot poor all playoffs long despite being the league MVP. And do we even need to discuss what happened with him and Hakeem Olajuwon in the conference finals? Because it is not good news for David Robinson. And I know in 1998 you could argue it wasn't prime D-Rob coming off the injury and that it was Tim Duncan's team. But I'm not here to talk about Tim Duncan, but rather Avery Johnson. Because for that playoff run, they averaged similar scoring numbers. D-Rob, of course, was the better defender and rebounder, and Avery Johnson was a far better facilitator. But that's kind of given considering their roles. But what isn't given and what isn't expected is that Avery Johnson was 14% more efficient in terms of true shooting than Robinson, and even had more win shares and a similar VORP rating in this playoff run. And there's even more instances of being outperformed or outclassed in an area of his normal regular season strengths, such as being out-rebounded by a 20-year-old Kobe Bryant or by Robert Horry or even Will Perdue in a playoff series. And he had some statistical dominant performances like against the Lakers in 1995 or the Suns in 1996, but both of those teams had several injuries that derailed their seasons. And that Lakers team as a whole wasn't that great either. I mean, led by Nick Van Exel, who isn't a bad player, but he's far from a number 1 option. And the Suns were down 2 key forwards in Michael Finley and Wayman Tisdale, so I'm trying to say this is a dominant level performance, but you just never get that feeling here. And I know Robinson is a center, so this might not matter much in your eyes, but it does to me for a player that is losing efficiency in scoring by a large drop in the playoffs as well as scoring output. So then I'd ask, is he at least creating more efficiently for his teammates? And the answer is no. In fact, Robinson's offensive rating dropped 6 points in the postseason just from an individual standpoint. But the Spurs, while they weren't the best offense in the 1990s, were still always hanging around the top. But you can trace back dozens of playoff series led by David Robinson where their offensive efficiency was just awful. In more seasons than not, their true shooting efficiency dropped in large quantity for the playoffs in comparison to their regular season as well. To add to this, Robinson also had a worse assist-to-turnover ratio in the playoffs than in the regular season. And yes, Robinson does have 2 rings at the end of the day, but there was a lot of luck involved with both. I mean, first of all, his broken foot in 1997 was a blessing in disguise because it's the season that the Spurs were just horrible and they were able to draft Tim Duncan and ultimately solidify his career because up to that point, David Robinson had no rings. And Tim Duncan was the guy that led their team from the year he stepped onto that court until maybe the late 2000s-ish when the big 3 of Ginobili and Parker gained more responsibility for leading the team, and then every other year there was kind of a new guy leading the team. Secondly, the Chicago Bulls. My Chicago Bulls, to be exact. I mean, Jerry Krause broke up our team prior to the Spurs' first title, and everyone in that organization from Mike to Scotty to Phil was exhausted. But imagine an 8-month layoff into the lockout season in 1998-1999, and how much that would benefit those Bulls that season with time off in between. I mean, it helped the Spurs refine stable success in 2012 after a disappointing loss to the 8-seed Grizzlies, where people thought they were just going to blow it up and everyone was going to retire. It helped the Lakers a lot in 2020 in the Orlando bubble. I mean, D-Rob shot horrible in the 1999 finals as well as a complimentary option to Tim Duncan against an 8-seeded Knicks whose starting center Patrick Ewing was injured all series. And as for 2003, there's a reason people say that was one of the best single seasons ever for Tim Duncan. Because not only was Tim Duncan the MVP, not only did he have a great finals performance, but D-Rob was essentially washed. Now, his efficiency increased that year, but when you're dropping like 7 points per game and playing significantly less defense, does it really matter? So in conclusion, I think David Robinson is overrated. I mean, he's an all-time great regular season player just like James Harden. But also like James Harden, he has a substantial drop off in the playoffs. The separator between the two, though, is that D-Rob's higher peak win shares for a longer period. I mean, his defensive capability, his immediate dominance out of the U.S. Navy. And listen, I'm not saying D-Rob is bad because he's on this list for a reason, and he isn't bad. But nearly everyone has him top 25 all time from what I've seen, and I just don't get it. Because he pretty much never had a playoff series where he dominated, was the clear-cut best on his team, and won that said series. And I understand not every player has the teams to realistically compete in the playoffs, but D-Rob had another two-way star for nearly his whole career, as well as a plethora of great supporting players. Dennis Rodman was the best rebounder on his team for several years in the mid-90s. He had Sean Elliott early in his career. He got Tim Duncan later in his career. And in 1995, I mean, his cast was compatible with Hakeem, but they just simply outplayed those other Spurs, and as we know, Hakeem outplayed Robinson. I mean, it's that simple. But guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about David Robinson. Am I being too harsh on him? Because I feel like a lot of people don't point out the fact that he had a lot of playoff L's, lots of playoff lapses, and a lot of times he underperformed, to put it simply. I'm just going to end this video now. I hope you all enjoyed. Stay tuned for more, and I think that's going to do it for me. So I'm out. Peace.